The Velkarith Empire stretched across 12 star systems, and within its iron grip lived creatures of ancient power and terrible beauty. The Draconeth, dragons of the stars who could bend space itself with their fire. Yet these magnificent beings were not free. They were slaves, chained to warships as living engines, their warp fire harvested to carry imperial vessels across the black ocean of space. Seraphix was one such dragon, her scales shimmering like liquid silver in the cold light of the dreadnought called Obsidian Throne. And she had served the Empire for 30 years, which was young for her kind, though every year felt like a century of pain and humiliation, for the neural collar around her neck sent agony through her body whenever she disobeyed. And she had learned to obey. She had learned to be small and quiet and invisible. The other Draconeth called her defective because she was smaller than most, barely the size of an Earth shuttle, and because she did not roar with fury or dream of battle. She dreamed instead of open skies and gentle winds and a place where no one would hurt her. But such dreams were dangerous in the Empire, and she kept them locked deep within her heart. What she could not keep locked away were the 4 eggs hidden in a forgotten maintenance shaft deep in the belly of the ship. Eggs she had laid in secret 3 months ago. Eggs that contained her children, her hope, her greatest crime against the Velkarith Empire. Breeding was forbidden without imperial permission, and permission was only granted to create war dragons, massive and aggressive and empty of everything except rage. But Seraphix had not planned these eggs. They had come from a brief moment of connection with another enslaved dragon who had since been transferred to a distant fleet. And now she was alone with her secret, visiting the eggs whenever she could, keeping them warm with her breath, singing to them in the old language that the Empire had tried to make her forget. She named them in her mind, Ember and Ash and Spark and Nova, 4 little flames that she prayed would somehow survive in this universe of darkness. But prayers do not stop maintenance drones. And one cold morning the alarm came. A drone had detected biological signatures in Shaft 7. And within minutes, Commander Vorath himself stood before Seraphix, his gray face twisted with disgust, his 4 eyes burning with cruel satisfaction. "Unauthorized reproduction," he announced to the assembled crew, his voice echoing through the cargo bay where Seraphix had been dragged in chains. "This defective beast has contaminated our vessel with illegal spawn. Bring the eggs." Seraphix screamed and thrashed against her restraints, but the neural collar activated, and pain like lightning shot through every nerve, and she collapsed, watching helplessly as soldiers carried her 4 eggs into the bay, placing them on the cold metal floor, like garbage to be disposed of. "The punishment for unauthorized breeding is death," Vorath declared, "but death is too quick, too merciful. Instead, this creature will watch its spawn destroyed, and then it will be beaten until it understands that it is property, that its body belongs to the Empire, that it has no right to create life without our permission." He gestured to a soldier who raised an energy weapon, pointing it at the eggs, and Seraphix found strength she did not know she possessed. She lunged forward, breaking one chain, then another, throwing herself over her eggs as the weapon fired, the blast striking her back and burning through scale and flesh. But she did not move. She would not move. She would die here protecting her children. Vorath laughed, a cold and empty sound. "How touching. Beat her until she moves or until she dies. I care not which." The neural lashes came down, weapons designed to cause maximum pain without death. And Seraphix screamed, as fire that was not her own raced across her body, again and again, her vision blurring, her strength fading, but still she did not move from her eggs. Then she felt it, movement beneath her, a cracking sound, and through her agony she looked down to see her eggs hatching, the stress and her body heat triggering an early emergence, and 4 tiny heads broke through their shells, 4 pairs of eyes opening for the first time to see their mother bleeding and broken above them. They were so small, barely the size of earth cats, their scales soft and wet, their wings crumpled and new, and they cried out in fear and confusion, not understanding why their first moments of life were filled with pain and shouting and the smell of their mother's blood. "Fascinating," Vorath said, leaning closer. "Defective runts, just like their mother. Throw them in the incinerator, all 4 of them. Let the mother watch." A soldier reached down to grab Ember, the firstborn, and something inside Seraphix shattered. Not her body, not her spirit, but the chains that fear had wrapped around her heart for 30 years. She was not just a slave. She was a mother, and no force in the universe would take her children from her. The warp fire came from somewhere deeper than she had ever reached before. Blue and white and hot as a star's heart, it exploded outward in a wave that sent soldiers flying and shattered the neural collar around her neck. And for the first time in 30 years, Seraphix felt no pain, only power, only purpose. She gathered her 4 babies in her claws, ignoring the burns on her back and the wounds covering her body, and she ran, crashing through walls and bulkheads, following instincts she did not know she had, toward the outer hull of the ship. Behind her, Vorath screamed orders, weapons fired, alarms howled, but nothing could stop her now. She burst through the hull, into the vacuum of space, wrapping her children in a bubble of warp energy, and she looked at the stars, so many stars, but which way was safe? Which way led to freedom? There in the distance, a region of space the Velkarith avoided, Sector 7G, territory claimed by a species called humans, creatures the Empire considered weak and sentimental and not worth conquering. Weak and sentimental sounded perfect to Seraphix. She poured everything she had into one desperate warp jump, feeling her energy failing, feeling consciousness slipping away, but she held her children close, and she flew toward the unknown, flew toward hope. The jump collapsed near a small moon covered in green and gold, and Seraphix fell like a meteor, crashing into soft earth, plowing a trench through what looked like a field of grain, finally stopping in a cloud of dust and steam. She could not move. She could barely breathe. Her wounds were too severe, and her energy was gone, crying and scared but alive. And she curled around them one last time, ready to die, but grateful that her last act had been one of love. Lights approached through the darkness. Voices called out in a language she did not understand, and strange creatures appeared, walking on 2 legs, their faces soft and hairless, their eyes wide with shock. Seraphix tried to growl, tried to threaten, but all that came out was a weak whimper, and her children pressed against her, trembling. One of the creatures stepped forward, a tall one with gray in its fur and lines on its face, and it made sounds to the others, gesturing with its upper limbs. And though Seraphix expected weapons and chains and more pain, the creature simply knelt beside her and placed a gentle appendage on her snout. Its eyes were kind, and it spoke softly, and even though Seraphix did not understand the words, she understood the tone. For the first time in her life, someone was telling her that everything would be okay. She closed her eyes, holding her babies, and let the darkness take her, hoping that when she woke, she would not find herself back in chains, hoping that these strange creatures were truly as gentle as they seemed. Eli Anderson had seen many things in his 52 years of life. He had fought in the colony wars, watched his wife die from the Martian fever, raised 2 children alone on a farming moon at the edge of human space, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of a wounded dragon lying in his wheat field, curled around 4 tiny babies and bleeding silver blood into the soil. "Dad, what is it?" his daughter May asked, her flashlight trembling in her hands, and beside her 12-year-old Jonas stood with his mouth hanging open. "I think," Eli said slowly, kneeling beside the massive creature, "I think it's a mother who needs help." The dragon's eyes fluttered open, and Eli saw something he recognized. The look of a parent who had given everything to protect their young. The look of someone who expected only cruelty, but hoped desperately for kindness. "Easy there, big girl," he murmured, keeping his voice low and calm. "Nobody here is going to hurt you, I promise." The colony security team arrived minutes later. 6 men and women with pulse rifles and nervous expressions. And their leader, a stocky man named Hector, immediately raised his weapon. "Step back, Eli. That thing could be dangerous." "Does she look dangerous to you?" Eli demanded, standing between Hector's gun and the dragon. "Look at her. She's half dead, and she's trying to protect her babies. You really want to shoot a mother in front of her children?" "That's a Draconeth," Hector argued. "They're Velcorith weapons, living warships. If the Empire finds out we have one, they'll come for us." "Then I guess they'll come for us," Eli replied, his voice hard as stone. "Because I'm not stepping aside, and I'm not letting you shoot her, not while I'm breathing." May moved past both men and knelt beside one of the tiny dragons, a golden one that was mewling weakly, and she pulled off her jacket and wrapped it around the shivering creature. "It's cold," she said, "and scared, just like any baby would be." Jonas joined his sister, carefully lifting another hatchling, this one silver like its mother, and the little dragon stopped crying and nuzzled against his chest. "Can we keep them, Dad?" Jonas asked, his eyes bright with wonder. Hector lowered his weapon and sighed. "The council will have to decide, but for now we need to get this creature somewhere safe, somewhere we can treat those wounds." They moved Seraphix to the colony's largest structure, an old warehouse that had been converted into a community center, and there Dr. Hannah Chen took charge, a woman of 70 years with white hair and steady hands who had once been a xenobiologist for Earth's Exploration Corps. "I've read about the Draconeth," she said, examining Seraphix's wounds. "Magnificent species, spacefaring for over 10,000 years, but the Velcorith conquered them 3 centuries ago and turned them into slaves. This one has been tortured. These marks on her back are from neural lashes, and these burns look like weapon fire." She escaped, Eli realized. She was running from them, protecting her babies. "And she ran to us," Hannah said quietly. "Perhaps she heard that humans are kind, or perhaps she simply had nowhere else to go. Either way, she's here now, and I intend to help her." The colony council met that night. 20 representatives from the 2,000 settlers who called Harvest Moon Epsilon 4 home, and the debate was fierce. "We can't risk war with the Velcorith Empire," argued Marcus Webb, the colony administrator. "They have 1,000 warships. We don't even have a single defensive satellite." "So we should just hand over a beaten mother and her children?" Hannah demanded. "Hand them back to the people who did this to her? Let them finish what they started?" "She's not human," someone pointed out. "She's an alien. Their property, legally." Eli stood up, his voice filling the room. "I lost my wife 6 years ago, and for a while I didn't think I could go on, but I did, because I had 2 kids depending on me. And every night I prayed that if anything ever happened to me, there would be someone out there willing to protect my children. Someone who would show them kindness, even if it cost them something." He paused, looking at the faces around him. That dragon out there flew through space with wounds that should have killed her just to give her babies a chance at life. And you want to know if she's worth protecting? Well, I say if we can't find it in ourselves to protect her, then we don't deserve to call ourselves human. The vote was unanimous. Seraphix and her children would stay. Over the following weeks, May and Jonas barely left the warehouse, helping Hannah tend to Seraphix's wounds and feeding the hatchlings a mixture of milk and mineral supplements that Hannah developed after studying their biology. Jonas named them officially. Ember was the golden one whom May had rescued, brave and curious and always trying to explore. Ash was silver like his mother, quiet and thoughtful, always watching. Spark was copper-colored and mischievous, constantly escaping from whatever container they put him in. And Nova was the smallest, her scales a deep blue, shy and fearful, always staying close to Seraphix. Seraphix watched the humans with confusion at first, flinching whenever someone moved too quickly, covering her babies with her wings whenever a stranger entered the warehouse. But slowly she began to understand that these creatures meant no harm. She watched Eli bring fresh meat, and Hannah change her bandages, and Jonas read stories aloud to the hatchlings who could not understand the words, but loved the sound of his voice. And something in her heart began to crack open, something that had been frozen for 30 years. One morning, May came in carrying a bucket of water and a soft brush, and she sat down beside Seraphix and began to gently clean the dried blood from her scales. "My mom used to brush my hair when I was little," May said, her voice soft. She said it was her favorite part of the day, just being quiet together, taking care of each other. "I miss that." Seraphix did not understand all the words, but she understood the feeling, the need for gentle touch, for connection, for love, and she lowered her great head and let this human child care for her. When the brush reached a particularly sore spot, Seraphix winced, and May immediately pulled back. "Sorry," the girl said, "I'll be more careful." And Seraphix realized something that shocked her to her core. This human child cared about her comfort, cared about her pain, saw her not as a tool or a weapon, but as a being worthy of gentleness. A single tear fell from Seraphix's eye, silver and shimmering, and May reached up and wiped it away. "You're safe now," May whispered. "We're going to take care of you, all of you. You're part of our family now." Seraphix did not know the word family, but she knew the feeling, the warmth in her chest, the sense that she had finally found something she had been searching for her entire life. But peace was not meant to last. 3 weeks after Seraphix's arrival, a ship appeared in orbit, a Velkarith scout vessel, and its commander broadcast a message that every colonist heard. "Attention, human settlement. You are harboring stolen Imperial property, the defective Draconeth, designated Unit 773, and its unauthorized offspring. You will surrender these assets within 12 hours or face annihilation. The Velkarith Empire does not negotiate with thieves." Eli stood on his porch, looking up at the sky, where the enemy ship hung like a dark star, and May and Jonas stood beside him. "What are we going to do, Dad?" Jonas asked, fear in his voice. Eli put his arms around his children and thought of Seraphix in the warehouse, of the 4 little dragons who had started following his kids around like puppies, of the promise he had made to protect them. "We're going to do," he said quietly, "what humans have always done when bullies come for the innocent." "What's that?" May asked. Eli's jaw tightened. "We're going to say no." Commander Vorath stood on the bridge of his scout ship and smiled with all 4 of his mouths. The hunt was finally over, and soon the defective dragon and its illegal spawn would be destroyed, an example to all slaves who dared to dream of freedom. He had tracked Unit 773 across 3 star systems, following the fading trail of her desperate warp jump. And now here she was, hiding on a primitive farming moon, protected by nothing more than a few thousand humans who grew food in the dirt like animals. "Broadcast the demand again," he ordered, "and prepare a landing force. These creatures clearly need motivation." On the surface of Harvest Moon Epsilon 4, the colonists gathered in the community center, fear on many faces, determination on others, and Eli Anderson stood at the front of the room with a communication device in his hand. "Earth Colonial Authority has responded to our distress call," he announced. "They advise us to comply with Velkarith demands. They say that starting a war over 1 dragon is not worth the risk." Angry shouts filled the room, and Marcus Webb, the colony administrator, stepped forward. "Then we comply," he said, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry, Eli. I truly am. but we cannot sacrifice our entire colony for aliens we met 3 weeks ago." "Can't we?" Hannah Chen demanded. "I remember a time when humans said the same thing about other humans, when we let tyrants take our neighbors because protecting them was inconvenient. And I remember the shame we felt when we finally found our courage and saw what our cowardice had allowed." "This is different," Marcus argued. "Is it?" Eli asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly the same. A bully with a bigger gun, demanding we hand over innocent lives, and us trying to decide if doing the right thing is worth the cost." He activated the communication device and broadcast on all frequencies, carrying not just across the colony, but out into space where any ship might hear. "Attention Velkorith vessel. This is Eli Anderson of Harvest Moon Epsilon 4. You want us to give you a mother and her children so you can execute them for the crime of existing? You call her defective, you call her property. But I've spent 3 weeks watching her care for her babies, and I've seen more love in her eyes than I see in your entire empire." He paused, thinking of his wife, of his children, of every time he had chosen the easy path and regretted it. "You beat her for having children. You wanted to burn her babies alive, and now you expect us to help you finish the job. Well, here's my answer. No, not today, not ever. You want them, you come down here and try to take them, but know this. Every human on this moon will stand between you and that family, and you'll have to kill us all before we let you touch them." The message ended, and for a moment there was silence. Then someone in the back of the room started clapping, and others joined, and soon the entire community center was on its feet, cheering and shouting and choosing courage over fear. Marcus Webb stared at Eli with wide eyes. "You just declared war on the Velkorith Empire." "No," Eli replied. "I just told them that some things are worth fighting for." Across human space, Eli's message spread like wildfire, picked up by news networks and shared across social media, and played in coffee shops and military bases and government buildings. A farmer on a backwater moon had told one of the galaxy's most powerful empires to go to hell, and something in the human spirit responded. On the colony, the preparations began. Crop dusters were fitted with whatever weapons the colonists could find. Hunting rifles were distributed. Trenches were dug around the warehouse where Seraphix and her children waited. May and Jonas refused to leave Seraphix's side. And the dragon watched the activity with growing confusion and horror. "Why?" she asked, her voice rough and broken, the first human standard words she had managed to learn. "Why you fight? You die for me?" May took her massive claw in both hands. "Because you're worth fighting for." "No," Seraphix rumbled. "I am nothing. I am broken thing, not worth human lives." "You're a mother," May said fiercely. "You're brave and strong, and you love your babies so much that you flew through space while you were dying, just to give them a chance. That's not nothing. That's everything." Seraphix had no response to this, no framework for understanding creatures who would sacrifice themselves for a stranger. And she lowered her head and wept. The Velkorith landing craft came at dawn. 3 shuttles carrying 50 soldiers in combat armor. And Commander Vorath himself led the assault, determined to personally oversee the execution of the dragon who had dared to defy him. The colonists met them at the edge of town, 200 farmers and miners and shopkeepers, armed with weapons that should have been no match for Imperial technology. "Stand aside," Vorath commanded, "or die with the beasts you protect." Eli raised his old military rifle. "I already told you our answer." The battle was short and brutal. The colonists were outgunned and they knew it. But they did not run. They fell back slowly, fighting for every meter, buying time, though they did not know what they were buying it for. Vorath's soldiers pushed forward, taking casualties, but advancing steadily. And within an hour, they had reached the warehouse. "Bring out the dragon," Vorath ordered, "or we burn this building with everyone inside." And then Seraphix emerged, not dragged but walking, her wounds still visible, but her eyes blazing with something new, something fierce. "No more," she said, her voice stronger now. "No more hurt. More take. These humans, my family now. You want them? You go through me." Vorath laughed. "You're half dead, defective. What can you possibly do?" Seraphix spread her wings, and warp fire began to glow along her scales. "I can die protecting people I love. I can teach my children what courage looks like. I can show them that their mother was more than a slave." She unleashed her fire, not to kill, but to shield, creating a barrier of blue flame between the Velkarith soldiers and the wounded colonists, and her 4 babies ran to her side, tiny but determined, adding their small flames to hers. Vorath screamed in frustration and called to his ship, "Begin orbital bombardment. Level this entire settlement." "Commander," came the reply, "we have a problem." What problem could possibly? The sky lit up as ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Human vessels of every size and shape. Military cruisers and private yachts and cargo. Freighters and pleasure craft. 47 ships that had heard Eli's message and come running from across human space. The lead vessel broadcast on all frequencies, and a woman's voice filled the air, calm and cold as ice. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the Human Systems Alliance destroyer Defiance. To the Velkarith vessel in orbit. You are surrounded. This colony and everyone in it, including the Draconeth, are now under the protection of the Alliance. Power down your weapons and surrender, or we will open fire." Vorath stared at the sky, at the ships that had appeared from nowhere, at the humans who had come to die for creatures they had never met, and for the first time in his military career, he felt something he did not recognize. Fear. "This isn't over," he snarled at Seraphix. "The Empire will hear of this treachery, and we will return with a fleet that will burn your precious humans to ash." He retreated to his shuttles, his soldiers following, and within minutes the Velkarith scout ship was gone, jumping to hyperspace, running from the wall of human vessels. Seraphix's flames died down as her strength failed, and she collapsed. But May and Jonas were there to catch her, and Eli knelt beside her with tears in his eyes. "You did it," he said. "You protected us." Seraphix looked at the humans around her, at the colonists who had fought and bled for her, at the ships in the sky that had come from across the stars. "No," she whispered. "You protected me. Why? Why you come? Why you fight? Why you care?" Admiral Tanaka's voice came through Eli's communicator, warm now instead of cold. "Because that's what humans do. Because we heard a farmer tell an empire that some things matter more than safety, and we couldn't let him face that alone." Seraphix closed her eyes, and for the first time since she was a hatchling, she felt something she had forgotten existed. The weeks that followed the standoff were strange and difficult and beautiful, filled with moments that Seraphix did not understand, and feelings she did not know how to process. The Velkarith Empire issued formal protests and economic sanctions and angry threats, but they did not attack. The Human Systems Alliance had made clear that any assault on Epsilon 4 would be considered an act of war, and while the Empire was powerful, they were not ready to fight humanity over 4 baby dragons and their mother. And so Seraphix was safe, truly safe, for the first time in her life, and she had no idea what to do with that safety. Dr. Hannah Chen brought in a specialist, a xenopsychologist named Amara Osei, who had spent her career studying the mental health of non-human species. And Dr. Osei began visiting Seraphix every day, sitting beside her in the warehouse that had become her home, talking and listening, and slowly helping her understand the damage that 30 years of slavery had done to her mind. "You flinch when anyone raises their hand," Dr. Osei observed one afternoon, "even when they're just waving hello, even when there's no threat at all." Seraphix lowered her head in shame. In Empire, raised hand means pain, means punishment. Body remembers even when mind knows different. That's called trauma, Amara explained gently. Your body learned to protect you by expecting danger everywhere, and now it's having trouble unlearning those lessons. But it can be done. It just takes time and patience and people who care about you. Why you help me? Seraphix asked, the question that haunted her. Why any human help me? I am nothing. I am tool. I am broken. Amara reached out and placed her hand on Seraphix's claw. You are a person, Seraphix, a living being with thoughts and feelings and dreams. You have value simply because you exist, not because of what you can do for others. Seraphix stared at her. In Empire, Draconeth have no value. We are machines. We are property. No one ever say we have worth. The Empire was wrong, Amara said firmly. And somewhere deep inside you know that, because if you truly believed you were worthless, you would never have risked everything to save your children. You would have let them take your eggs, and you would have accepted your punishment. But you didn't. You fought back. And that tells me that part of you has always known the truth. Seraphix thought about this for a long time, and slowly she began to see herself differently, not as a defective tool, but as a mother who had done something brave, something worthy. Meanwhile, her children were thriving in ways that amazed everyone who saw them. Ember had bonded deeply with May, following the teenage girl everywhere, and the golden hatchling showed a remarkable intelligence, watching May do her schoolwork, and somehow understanding the patterns and numbers. Math, May told her father one evening, pointing to where Ember was arranging pebbles in sequences. Look, that's the Fibonacci pattern. She figured it out just from watching me. Ash had become Jonas's shadow, the silver dragon spending hours listening to music with the boy, his eyes closed and his head swaying. And when Jonas played his guitar, Ash would hum along in harmonies that made everyone who heard them stop and stare. Spark was trouble in the best possible way. The copper hatchling escaped from every enclosure they built, and explored every corner of the colony, making friends with farmers and shopkeepers and children who were delighted by his mischievous personality. And Nova, the smallest and most frightened, rarely left Seraphix's side, but slowly she was opening up, allowing May and Jonas to pet her, even occasionally venturing a few meters away to investigate something interesting before racing back to her mother. Eli came to visit Seraphix every evening, bringing food and sitting with her in comfortable silence. And one night she found the courage to ask him a question that had been burning in her mind. You fight Empire for me. You risked everything, but you not know me. Why you care about stranger? Eli was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the stars through the warehouse window. My wife died 6 years ago, he said finally. Cancer that we caught too late. And after she was gone, I wanted to give up. I wanted to just lie down and let the grief swallow me. But I couldn't, because I had 2 kids who needed me. He turned to face Seraphix. For 6 years I've been doing the minimum, just getting through each day, not really living, just surviving. And then you crashed into my field and I saw a mother who had given everything for her children, who had faced death rather than let anyone hurt them. And something woke up inside me. What? Seraphix asked. Hope, Eli said simply. Reminded me that there's still courage in the universe, still love worth fighting for. You showed me that even after everything the Empire did to you, there was still fire in your heart. And I thought if you could keep going after 30 years of slavery, then maybe I could keep going too. Seraphix felt tears gathering in her eyes. You say I help you, but I not do anything. I just run away. Eli shook his head. You didn't run away. You ran toward something, toward a chance for your children, toward hope, even when hope seemed impossible. That's not weakness, Seraphix. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. They sat together in silence after that, 2 wounded souls finding comfort in each other's presence. As the months passed, Seraphix grew stronger, both in body and in spirit, and she began to venture outside the warehouse, walking through the colony with May and Jonas and her children, getting to know the people who had fought for her, treated her with a mix of awe and warmth. The children wanted to touch her scales and hear her stories. The adults thanked her for the fire barrier that had saved lives during the battle, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to have her there. It was overwhelming and confusing and wonderful. One afternoon, Seraphix sat on a hill overlooking the grain fields, her 4 children playing in the grass nearby, and Dr. Osei joined her. "How are you feeling?" Amara asked. "Strange," Seraphix admitted. "Happy, but also scared. In Empire, happiness never lasted. Good things always taken away. I am waiting for pain to come back." Amara nodded. "That's normal for someone who's experienced what you have. Your mind is protecting you by expecting the worst. But I want you to try something. Instead of waiting for the pain, try noticing the good things. Every morning tell yourself 3 things that made you happy. Let your mind learn that good things can last." Seraphix tried this, and slowly the fear began to fade. She noticed how Ember's scales caught the sunlight like liquid gold, how Ash's humming filled the house with peace, how Spark's escapes made everyone laugh, how Nova was finally brave enough to explore on her own. She noticed how May brushed her scales every morning, and Jonas read stories every night, how Eli brought her favorite meats and sat with her watching the stars, how Hannah checked her wounds with gentle hands, and Amara listened to her pain with patient ears. She noticed that she was loved, truly loved, and that the love was not conditional on her usefulness or her obedience. It was, she realized, the first time in her life she had been treated as a person rather than a possession. And then the message came, intercepted by Alliance intelligence, and delivered to Seraphix by Admiral Tanaka herself. "We've been monitoring Velkarith communications," the Admiral explained. "We picked up something you need to hear." She played the recording, and Seraphix heard voices she recognized, Draconeth voices, speaking in the old language that the Empire had tried to make them forget. "Is it true? Is there really a place where dragons are free? Is there really a human who protects us? I heard the story, a mother who escaped with 4 babies, who found creatures who fought for her, who said no to the Empire. Can we reach her? Can we find this place? Can we be free too?" Seraphix listened with tears streaming down her face, and she understood that her story had become something larger than herself. She had not just found freedom. She had lit a fire that was spreading across the stars. "What do I do?" she asked Admiral Tanaka. "How do I help them?" The Admiral smiled. "That's what we need to figure out, together." 1 year had passed since Seraphix crashed into Eli Anderson's wheat field. 1 year of healing and growing and learning what it meant to be free. But now, a new chapter was beginning, a chapter that would change the galaxy forever. The whispers had become a roar across the stars. Enslaved Draconeth on hundreds of Velkarith ships had heard the story of the mother who found a home, and they were rising up, sabotaging engines, breaking their neural collars, fleeing toward the one place in the universe where dragons could be free. The Velkarith Empire was furious. Their living weapons were rebelling, their fleet was weakened, and they blamed humanity for it all. "They have amassed a war fleet," Admiral Tanaka reported at the Emergency Alliance Council meeting. 300 vessels, enough firepower to burn a dozen worlds, and they're coming for us, coming for Seraphix, coming to end this rebellion before it spreads any further. Debated, and some called for surrender. But Seraphix stood before them, her scales gleaming, her children at her side, and she spoke. "All my life I was told I was nothing. I was told that I existed only to serve, that my pain meant nothing, that my dreams were crimes. And I believed it. I believed it because everyone around me said the same thing." She looked at the humans who had become her family. "Then I met people who told me different, who showed me that kindness existed, who fought for me not because I was useful, but because I was alive and suffering and deserved better. Her voice grew stronger. There are thousands of Draconeths still in chains, still believing the lies they've been told, still waiting for someone to tell them they matter. I will not abandon them. I cannot. Because someone has to be the first to say no. Someone has to light the fire that shows them the way to freedom. She paused, her eyes meeting Admiral Tanaka's. Fight my war. You have already given me more than I ever dreamed possible. But I am going to face the Empire. I am going to lead my people home. And if I die doing it, then at least I will die as something more than a slave. Eli Anderson stood up from his seat. You're not going alone. Mr. Anderson, the Admiral began, but Eli cut her off. 30 years ago I joined the military to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Then I lost my way. I hid on a farming moon and pretended the universe wasn't my problem anymore. But Seraphix reminded me who I'm supposed to be. He looked around the room. She reminded all of us. Every message I've gotten since I made that broadcast. Every ship that came to help us. Every voice that said they were inspired by what we did. That's not nothing. That's proof that humans still have fire in our hearts. And I say we let that fire burn. One by one the council members stood. And when the vote was taken, it was unanimous. The Human Systems Alliance would stand with the Draconeth. The final battle came 3 weeks later, on the border between human space and the Velkarith Empire, where the refugee dragons had gathered. 117 Draconeth, who had escaped their chains and fled toward hope. Seraphix led them, and at her side flew Ember, Ash, Spark, and Nova. No longer tiny babies, but young dragons the size of horses, their flames bright and their spirits fierce. Remember, Seraphix told her people, we fight not for revenge, but for freedom, not for hatred, but for love. We will show the Empire that we are more than weapons, more than slaves. We are people, and our lives matter. The Velkarith fleet arrived like a storm of death, 300 warships bristling with weapons, and at their center flew the dreadnought Obsidian Throne, Commander Vorath's flagship. Surrender now, Vorath broadcast. Surrender, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and I will make you suffer for eternity. Seraphix answered him, we will never surrender. We will never be slaves again, and if this is where we die, then we die free. The battle began, and it was terrible and beautiful. Dragons soaring through space on wings of fire. Human ships maneuvering and striking. The void filled with light and fury. But the Velkarith were many and powerful, and slowly the Alliance and Draconeth forces were pushed back, taking losses they could not afford. We can't win this, Admiral Tanaka said grimly. There are too many of them. Seraphix looked at the enemy fleet, at the dragons still chained to Velkarith ships, forced to fight against their own people, and she made a decision. Then we changed the rules, she said, and she flew toward the heart of the enemy fleet, not attacking, but broadcasting on the frequency that all Draconeth could hear. Sisters and brothers, she called, I was like you once, afraid and broken and convinced that I deserved my chains. But I learned the truth. I learned that we have worth, that our lives matter, that there is a place in the universe where dragons are not tools, but people. She flew past warship after warship, letting them see her, letting them see that she was not chained, not collared, not afraid. The humans did not save me because I was useful to them. They saved me because they believed it was right. They fought for me because they have something the Empire will never understand. They have compassion. They have love. They have the courage to say no to cruelty, even when it costs them everything. On the Velkarith ships, Draconeth were listening, their eyes opening, their hearts awakening. You can be free, Seraphix continued, not by killing your masters, but by refusing to be slaves, by choosing your own path, by flying to us and joining a family that will never beat you or chain you or tell you that you are nothing. For a long moment, nothing happened, and Seraphix feared that she had failed. Then a dragon broke free from a Velkarith cruiser, shattering its neural collar, and flew toward the Alliance fleet. Then another, and another, and another. Across the Velkarith armada, dragons were rising, choosing freedom, choosing hope, and the Imperial ships began to drift as their living engines abandoned them. Commander Vorath screamed in fury and ordered his remaining vessels to attack, but the tide had turned. The battle ended not with the destruction of the Velkarith fleet, but with its retreat, broken and humiliated. And as their ships limped away, Seraphix gathered her people, 239 Draconeth, who had chosen freedom over fear. "Where do we go now?" one of them asked, a scarred old dragon who had been enslaved for over a century. Seraphix looked at the stars, at the human ships that surrounded them, with protection rather. Then chains, at her 4 children who had grown up free and brave. "Home," she said. "We go home." They returned to Harvest Moon Epsilon 4, which the Alliance renamed Dragon's Hearth, and there the freed Draconeth began building a new life. Months later, Seraphix sat on the porch of the Anderson farmhouse, watching the sun set over fields that now held both human crops and dragon gardens, her 4 children playing with human kids in the meadow below. May, now 17, leaned against Ember's golden side and looked up at Seraphix. "Do you ever miss the stars?" she asked. "The freedom of flying through space without anyone chasing you?" Seraphix thought about the question, about the darkness she had fled and the light she had found. "I used to think freedom meant being alone," she said slowly. "No chains, no masters, no one to tell me what to do. But I was wrong. Freedom is not about being alone. It is about choosing who you want beside you." She looked at Eli reading on the porch, at Hannah tending her garden, at Jonas teaching young dragons to play guitar, at May and Ember sharing secrets like sisters. "I have my children," Seraphix continued. "I have the humans who saved me. I have a whole world full of people who chose to care when they could have turned away. I am not in the stars anymore. I am surrounded by stars. I found my constellation." May smiled and hugged Ember tighter. "I'm glad you crashed into our field." "So am I," Seraphix rumbled. "So am I." And across the galaxy, in the darkest holds of Velkarith warships where dragons still waited in chains, a new word was spreading, a word in human standard that meant something no Draconeth word could capture. Home. They whispered it to each other in the darkness. They held it in their hearts like a flame that could not be extinguished, and they dreamed of a day when they too would find their constellation. One mother had shown them the way, because humans had reminded the universe what compassion looked like. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness could change everything.